Since yesterday, we lost an additional 31 lives for a total of 9,418 deaths. These are people who started with us in 2020 and won't be with us at the Thanksgiving table. Today, we are reporting 3,874 cases for a total of 33 confirmed cases since the start of this pandemic.
An emotional Illinois Public Health Department Director, Dr. Ngozi Ezike, breaking down in tears today while giving the death toll during a news conference with the governor, symbolizing the emotional toll for our medical workers and our entire country. COVID crisis spiraling. More than 80,000 cases reported in this country just in the last day, the most since this summer. Chicago's new curfew for non-essential businesses goes into effect tonight. The final stretch after last night's debate, it's now on to Election Day, with President Trump and Joe Biden campaigning just hours after their face-off. Both campaigns trying to spin their candidates' performances and the truth behind some of their claims, with more than 52 million ballots already cast. Buying black at a crucial time, the impact of the pandemic and the Black Lives Matter movement on black-owned businesses.
You started a business smack dab in the middle of a pandemic.
Right.
They will scratch their head
and say, what was she thinking? But again, I say, why not now?
And the wildfire emergency spreading across Colorado, growing more than 100,000 acres in a day, now the second largest in the history of the state. Thinking about a facelift? You're not alone. With so many staring at their faces on video calls all day, tonight our report on the surge in plastic surgery. Good evening, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm Lindsay Davis. The final sprint is now upon us. Just 11 days until Election Day. And after the final presidential debate last night, both campaigns back out on the campaign trail today. President Trump once again trying to win over senior citizens. Today, he tried to court their vote at the Villages in Florida, the largest retirement community in the U.S. While Joe Biden gave a policy speech laying out just how he would tackle the pandemic, starting during the transition if he wins the election. Coronavirus was the first topic at the last night's debate, a more civil and substantive affair than the first face-off, but the candidates still very much at odds on the status of the virus and how to get it under control as we head into an uncertain winter. ABC's chief White House correspondent Jonathan Karl leads us off with the latest on the race for the White House.
In their second and final face-off, Trump and Biden presented starkly different views of a pandemic that has killed more than 223,000 Americans and upended the campaign.
It will go away, and as I say, we're rounding the turn, we're rounding the corner. It's going away.
220,000 Americans dead. If you hear nothing else I say tonight, hear this. Anyone who's responsible for that many deaths should not remain as President of the United States of America.
For a moment, ever so brief, the president took responsibility, and then he took it back.
Excuse me, I take full responsibility. It's not my fault that he came here. It's China's fault.
New infections are spiking throughout much of the country. Just this past week, 14 states hit a record number of people in the hospital with COVID-19.
We're about to go into a dark winter, and he has no clear plan.
We're going to have a dark winter at all. We're opening up our country. We have no choice. We can't lock ourselves up in a basement like Joe does.
He says that we're learning to live with it. People are learning to die with it.
Today, Biden said not only has the president mishandled the pandemic, but that he has failed to tell Americans the truth.
Last night, we saw the President of the United States lie to the American people and repeatedly lie about the state of this pandemic. We saw him diminish the pain felt by so many Americans.
The crisis has put an even brighter spotlight on health care. For 3 years, the president has promised to come up with a plan. Last night, he promised again.
What I would like to do is a much better health care, much better, will always protect people with pre-existing. So I'd like to terminate Obamacare, come up with a brand new, beautiful health care.
He's never come up with a plan. I guess we're going to get the pre-existing condition plan the same time we get the infrastructure plan that we've been waiting since 17, 18, 19, and 20.
Moderator Kristen Welker asked the president to respond to allegations he is fueling racial divisions.
I am the least racist person in this room.
This guy has a dog whistle about as big as a foghorn.
Nobody has done more for the black community than Donald Trump. And if you look, with the exception of Abraham Lincoln, possible exception, but the exception of Abraham Lincoln, nobody has done what I've done.
Abraham Lincoln here is one of the most racist presidents we've had in modern history.
Today, President Trump is seizing on a moment near the very end of the debate when Biden said he wants to see the end, eventually, of the oil industry.
Would you close down the oil industry?
By the way, I would transition from the oil industry, yes.
Oh,
I will
that's
transition.
a big statement.
It is a big statement.
That's a big
because
statement.
I would stop.
Why would you do that?
Because the oil industry pollutes significantly.
I see.
And here's the deal. But
That's
you
a
can't
big
do
statement.
that. Well, if you let me finish the statement, because it has to be replaced by renewable energy over time.
Because he is
Mr.
going to
President?
destroy the oil industry. Will you remember that, Texas? Will you remember that, Pennsylvania, Oklahoma?
Vice
In
President?
a sign the Biden campaign was concerned about that, Biden talked to reporters late last night after the debate to clarify.
We're not going to get rid of fossil fuels. We're going to get rid of the subsidies for fossil fuels, but we're not going to get rid of fossil fuels for a long time. It will not be gone for probably 2050.
With the debates behind him, the president is hoping his rallies, tonight he is in Florida, will be enough to turn his campaign around.
11 days from now, we're going to win the state of Florida. We're going to win 4 more years in the White House.
President rallying his supporters there. Jonathan Karl joins us now. John, the debates are now over. So where is the Trump campaign putting their focus in this final stretch?
Well, the debates are over and, their money has been running out, so they're not advertising perhaps as much as they would like to. They do say they have a big ground game, but more than anything, Lindsay, it's the rallies. The president has an unbelievable schedule outlined already for the next several days. I count 10 different rallies over the next 4 days in 7 states. In fact, tomorrow alone, he's going to be in 3 different states, 3 different rallies, energizing his core voters. I don't know what ultimately it does at this point in the campaign. Of course, everybody who is attending those rallies, we would assume, is already firmly in the camp of being a Trump voter.
And Joe Biden today, again, hitting the president on his handling of the pandemic. So what does Biden say that he'd do differently if he wins on Election Day?
He outlined a rather detailed plan. One of the things he said is that he would start before getting sworn in during the transition by reaching out to every single governor in every single state, Democrat and Republican, asking them what they need, talking about the issue of possible state mask mandates. He also outlined a plan on testing that he said would be aimed at testing as many people, a national testing plan aimed at testing as many Americans in a single day as are now tested in a week.
Jonathan Karl, thanks so much.
Thanks, Lindsay.
And now to the millions of Americans voting early in this election. 52 million votes have already been cast, about half of them in battleground states, including Florida. These were the lines today in the Villages, that conservative-leaning Florida retirement community. The president visited there earlier, trying to shore up his base. Our Rachel Scott is there and has more about the massive early voter turnout across the country. It's tonight's Ballot Watch.
Tonight, with just 11 days to go, record-shattering turnout across the country. More than 52 million Americans have already voted. Voters today in Virginia trying to stay cool. In South Carolina, this man waiting an hour and a half to vote.
I'm fine. I'm fine with the wait. I'm retired, so what the hell? I have time.
And in California, election officials unsealing thousands of ballots, preparing them to be counted on Election Day. Tonight, 6 states already surpassing 1 million in-person votes. Texas topping the early voting list with more than 6 million cast by mail and in person. Across the state, curbside voting, cars packing into parking lots. Here in the battleground state of Florida, the president touching down to rally senior citizens.
Tomorrow morning I'm voting here as opposed to sending it in. There's a mail-in. I like being able to vote. I'm old-fashioned, I guess.
As residents headed to the polls with their minds already made up.
I voted for President Donald Trump.
Voted on the Biden-Harris ticket.
Older voters are more likely to turn out and have leaned Republican in every presidential election since 2004. But in the final stretch, seniors appear to be shifting towards Biden. In the nation's largest retirement community, these registered Republicans tell me they're backing the former vice president, and that last night's debate did little to move the needle.
He's done too much damage to this country.
How would you rate the president's handling of the pandemic?
Is there a number less than 0?
Certainly a scathing critique there of the president's handling of this pandemic. Rachel Scott joins us now. And Rachel, we talked about that senior vote yesterday. Do you get the sense from seniors that you've been talking to that Biden might actually be able to make some serious inroads in this typically conservative area?
Yeah, well, they're really hoping so, and especially here in the Villages, somewhere where the president won back in 2016. Democrats here say they're hoping just to peel away enough support that it actually makes an effect across the state. In a state where everything is so close and they have these nail-biting elections, they're hoping that even just having some of the president's support among seniors slip, that could put Democrats in a better position to win this state. But listen, both campaigns know that the state of Florida is absolutely critical. No candidate in the last 6 election cycles has gone on to win the White House without winning Florida, Lindsay.
And Rachel, President Trump has spent a lot of time certainly there in Florida. Former President Obama is set to visit the state tomorrow. As usual, all eyes on the Sunshine State. How do both parties feel about their chances there 11 days out?
Well, I think it's safe to say that Democrats are looking at these early voting numbers and they're feeling pretty good. They feel like people are turning out, but they've also been here before. When they look at Joe Biden holding this double-digit lead over President Trump, many of them are reminded of back in 2016, where at the same point, Hillary Clinton also held a very similar edge on President Trump and then went on to lose the election. So they're trying not to get comfortable here or trying not to get a false sense of security. The Trump campaign, they still think that they can turn this around, but they know that if they do not win the state of Florida, they are likely to lose this entire election, Lindsay.
Rachel Scott, thanks so much. As you saw at the top of the show, a top doctor in Illinois was overcome with emotion as she announced the state's latest COVID numbers, and her anguish is being shared by so many on the front lines across the country. At this hour, cases are surging in nearly every state, and there is no sign that the pandemic is slowing down. Alex Perez is in Chicago tonight, where COVID cases are once again on the rise.
Tonight, an alarming surge in coronavirus cases, more than 82,000 in just the last day, the highest number since July. Deaths topping 1,000 for 2 straight days.
We are reporting 3,874 new cases for a total of 33 confirmed cases since the start of this pandemic. Excuse me, please.
Illinois' top doctor overcome with emotion as she shared the skyrocketing numbers in the state. Patients once again streaming into Northwestern Memorial Hospital in Chicago.
People are fatigued, they're tired of COVID, they're laying their guards down to people that they feel comfortable with.
Starting tonight, Chicago cracking down with a curfew for all non-essential businesses, including bars. And in some counties, a ban on indoor dining. Business owners frustrated.
We're not trying to hurt anybody. We are fighting for our livelihood and everything we've worked for.
If we need to close down restaurants and bars or take away their liquor licenses, take away their gaming licenses, we will do that.
14 states hitting record hospitalizations this week, including Oklahoma. 25-year-old Bethany Walters says after a week in this Oklahoma City hospital, the toughest part is breathing.
Well, it's hard to, I hope nobody else gets this sick, but hang in there if you do.
And in Utah, the virus taking a heavy emotional toll for those on the front lines.
Some days you go home and you really just hope that your patient's still there the next day.
But in the Salt Lake City area, some parents concerned about a disturbing trend dubbed the mom code. Mothers reportedly skipping testing their kids to avoid school shutdowns.
They're encouraging each other not to have their children tested for COVID-19. And so it's very dangerous. And it's something that really needs to be stopped.
Back here in Illinois, 10-year-old Joshua Smith was healthy before landing in the ICU with that rare pediatric syndrome. Tonight, the family telling us they're so grateful he made it home.
I'm happy that I'm back home, my family and my brothers.
The first night he came home,
he came in my room and he gave me a hug. He said, "Mom, I'm so happy you took me to the hospital. You saved my life."
Always grateful to hear about those happy endings. And Alex Perez joins us now. Alex, there's some hopeful news tonight also on the development of a vaccine.
Yeah, Lindsay, some good news. You'll remember AstraZeneca and Johnson & Johnson had paused the third phase of their trials because of unexplained illnesses, but they say it's now safe to resume those trials and that it's not unusual to take a pause like they did. In all, we now have 4 vaccines in the final stages of testing, Lindsay.
And Alex, in speaking with ICU staff, do they feel prepared for a surge in cases? What are their greatest concerns right now?
Well, Lindsay, they say they're as prepared as they can be, but they want people to realize that it's not a joke. They say there's COVID fatigue out there, that a lot of people just are kind of tired of hearing about it. But they say even if you're tired of hearing about it, the virus is still out there and it's still spreading. And right now, they're actually very concerned here in Chicago and across much of the country. The cold weather is moving in, so those outdoors events are going to go away. People are going to move inside, and they're worried that the surges are going to continue as we get in through these cold months. Lindsay.
Alex Perez, thanks so much as always. Tonight, the search for the missing continues as what is now the second largest fire in Colorado history continues to grow. We've been tracking the devastating scenes, families forced to flee their homes, many of them passing emergency responders heading into the danger. But tonight, the fire is growing worse, and there are many concerns that it may merge with the largest fire in Colorado history, which is just 10 miles away. Clayton Sandell is on the ground for us.
Tonight, the raging East Troublesome Fire is living up to its name, burning out of control, destroying homes and lives.
You can see behind me here, the fire is in the trees. The firefighters call this crowning. And when that happens in these conditions, the fire is virtually unstoppable.
Lyle and Marilyn Heilman's family believes the couple died in the fire, married for 68 years, calling their son as flames closed in to say the big one had arrived, that they would take their chances in a basement. The sheriff says he's trying to account for about a half dozen missing residents. The fire's intensity also making it hard to even count the number of homes destroyed in a blaze that exploded to more than 170,000 acres in just 48 hours.
Firefighters made a valiant effort to try and save the home here behind me, but you can see the fire, the conditions here were just too much, and all that is left of that home now is a chimney.
High wind warnings continue through tonight, but there's hope a weekend snowstorm will smother the biggest flames.
I think it's going to give us a chance to get back on our feet.
And Lindsay, conditions are much better here today, but the sheriff says it's still not safe enough to take down these roadblocks and let people go back home. There's no word yet on when evacuees will be able to do that. On the topic of wildfires and climate change, I had a conversation today with the incident commander who tells me that the main problem is that climate change is making wildfire season much longer, and that can stretch resources very thin. The 3 biggest wildfires in Colorado history have all happened within the last few months, and 2 of them are still out of control. Lindsay?
Clayton, thanks so much. Stay safe out there. And when we come back, the disturbing allegations made against a North Carolina 19-year-old who prosecutors say was plotting to kill Joe Biden and was stockpiling weapons. Delta bans hundreds of passengers for not wearing masks. Other airlines reveal just how many are on their no-fly list because of masks. But up next, why some plastic surgeons are telling us that masks have been good for business. Stay with us. Welcome back, everybody. Take a look at this video. Oh, a woman is recovering from serious injuries tonight after the Jeep that she was in crashed and then tumbled down the side of the mountain and right in front of that other vehicle there. This all unfolded in Telluride, Colorado. The woman was in the passenger seat and her dog was next to her. The dog was tossed out of the car but was found with no major injuries. We turn now to an industry that seems to be booming during these difficult times: plastic surgery and cosmetic treatments. While these are certainly luxuries that not all can afford, especially now, for some, the lockdowns have given them an excuse to lay low and heal. ABC's Kana Whitworth takes a look.
Our appearance has changed in quarantine. Athleisure wear in, hairstyles overgrown, makeup sales down. But plastic surgery and other cosmetic procedures booming?
Honestly, we didn't know what to expect in the beginning.
Around the world, some cosmetic doctors and plastic surgeons reporting a surge in demand for procedures big and small. Celebrity favorite nurse Jamie saw the uptick firsthand.
I guess I would call it like the Zoom and boom effect, because I think people are seeing themselves on Zoom and they're noticing the double chins, the eye bags, and just not feeling good.
Zoom calls an integral part of working from home, and that means staring at yourself a lot. That webcam sure can be unflattering, and that angle.
I would see myself, I'm like, those lips aren't that cute.
There's been some speculation about seeing yourself on the camera that big and seeing all your flaws.
The American Society of Plastic Surgeons found 35% of its doctors surveyed believe video calls are driving interest in plastic surgery.
We kind of wanted to know, well, what kind of procedures are you interested in? And the top 3 were rhinoplasties, which are the nose jobs, facelifts, and breast augmentations.
From that survey, the society concluded those going under the knife want to improve their confidence, especially at a time when they felt powerless in other areas.
Whatever's going to make somebody feel really good about themselves. Getting my touch-ups, to me, was like no big deal once I knew it was safe.
Botox, a popular wrinkle reducer for so many, and with masks covering up the lower half of the face, attention turns upward.
I was the first person on the East Coast to use it cosmetically.
30 years later, Dr. Patricia Wexler still seeing high demand.
I've thought there may be 5 people in New York who aren't using Botox.
Allergan, the maker of Botox, reported a 21% increase in online searches for Botox in April. Despite economic uncertainty, many finding ways to scrape together the money, leading more and more people to consider procedures.
They haven't been getting their manicures, the pedicures, their hair done, their highlights, their hair blown out, and they do have that money in the bank.
And you're just squirreling it away, and then you're getting something you've always wanted to do.
With all this extra time on our hands, social media is playing a part.
I think people have more time to do things like TikTok now and kind of document their lives and their journeys a little more.
Update number 2 on Kybella injections. So this video is just going to show day by day how it got better or worse.
The woman you see tells us quarantine allowed for discreet downtime, healing from home while working from home.
Sure. You're good. Thank you.
Thank you. A plus for Bridget, who spoke with us just 1 week after having her breast augmentation surgery.
To have to then get up and put on clothes and go back to work into an office when I'm still dealing with home care for myself, it would have been, I don't think I could have done it.
And when you have to leave the house, that mask can come in handy.
It's because I was wearing a mask, like nobody noticed my lips done because it was bruised for about a week after I got it done twice, and nobody noticed.
It's also catch-22 because then I'm getting work done and no one can see what I look like except for on Instagram.
For Dr. Simon Orient, his celebrity clients like the Kardashians benefit.
My Friday nights consist of Dr. Orion late night.
Best time ever. They had to come at night, or they had to come with a lot of disguises, but now it's easy. They could just come to my office, put a big mask on, and go outside. Nobody knows who they are.
More than just camouflage, the mask is a critical precaution during consultations.
We take people's temperatures when they come in. We started having UV lights all over the office. As soon as each patient leaves, we fog the room with disinfectants.
Dr. Orion even working towards rapid testing capabilities. But there are still those hesitant to leave the house or take the plunge.
For a lot of us that are doing these Zoom calls and Zoom meetings all of the time, but maybe we're not ready to come in for a procedure yet, what would you say?
Well, something easy like doing a beauty tool, using a beauty tool right before your meeting. It makes the skin appear firmer. The other thing, big beauty tip, is don't just have overhead lighting.
Better lighting and maybe take a step back.
What do you want to say to people that might just be really picking themselves apart right now?
I mean, I would say be easy because there's so much going on in the world, and not to fixate on like eye bags or a double chin. That we kind of all are going through the same thing, and so I say, you know, it's like a time for forgiveness and allowance, and if it helps you get through the day, why not?
Our thanks to Kana for that. And still ahead here on Prime, hundreds of protesters taking to the streets protesting the tightening of abortion rules. We'll tell you where. Scientists make a terrifying discovery, the first nest of murder hornets found. The new report breaking down the bigger domestic terror threat. Is it from the far right or the far left? We'll take a look by the numbers. But first, our tweet of the day, Arnold Schwarzenegger announcing he just had successful heart surgery.
In times like these, the news-making events happen here. ABC News.
President Trump meeting face-to-face with one of the world's most brutal dictators, Kim Jong-un.
The president.
Do you trust him? I do trust him, yeah. I think he trusts me, and I trust him.
Ivanka Trump.
I have to ask you about your emails. Your father had taken Hillary Clinton to task for this.
There just is no equivalency.
So the idea of lock her up doesn't apply to you?
No.
Comey.
How strange is it for you to sit here and compare the president to a mob boss? Very strange.
Michelle Obama.
What do you wish you could tell your pre-White House self?
Whew. Melania Trump.
Do you think there's still people there that he can't trust?
Yes.
Still working now?
Yes.
Michael Cohen.
So he's still lying?
Yes.
It's a big statement.
And now, in a year with so much on the line, we're right there.
Good evening tonight from Washington, a very busy news night.
America's #1 news source, ABC News, straightforward.
We all need someone who'll pull no punches and give it to us straight. No bull, no spin. Now imagine getting your news like that. Just give it to me straight. ABC News, straightforward.
Another week in America, a country facing a new test now.
The Wuhan airport, almost no one here.
The last flight out of Rome.
This is the nursing home just outside Seattle.
Dozens of people were just rushed off this cruise ship.
This is ground zero.
It is shut down.
Another ambulance just pulled out.
Now they're headed to the hospital.
Time is of the essence.
You can see the ship behind me.
This is the first time tests have been done here.
Morning, afternoon, evening, late night, 24/7. ABC News, there for you.
What's the most innovative daily news podcast out there to listen to every day? Well, the Edward R. Murrow Awards say it's Start Here, the daily news podcast from ABC News. Even the New York Times calls us a top news podcast worth listening to. Start Here, free on Apple Podcasts.
Welcome back, everybody. We turn now to extremist violence in America. A new report by the Center for Strategic and International Studies finds that white supremacists and other far-right groups have been behind the majority of domestic terrorist attacks so far this year, but that violent attacks by far-left groups are now on the rise. Here's more by the numbers. 67% of all terrorist attacks and plots in the U.S. in 2020 were perpetrated by white supremacists and other far-right extremists, according to the report. And 20% of attacks and plots were by anarchists, anti-fascists, and other far-left groups. That's a significant increase from last year, when far-left groups were behind only 8% of all domestic terrorist incidents. Demonstrators were the primary targets of far-right groups, accounting for 50% of their attacks and plots, while government, military, and police were the primary targets of far-left groups, making up 58% of those attacks. The Center for Strategic and International Studies tallied 61 domestic terrorist incidents so far in 2020, including 5 that were fatal. Now, that fatality number is lower than previous years, when it's ranged from 22 to 66 deaths annually. The study authors write that this could mean that, quote, extremists in 2020 prioritize sending messages through intimidation and threats rather than killing. Still lots ahead here on Prime tonight. Winter is coming, the brutal cold sweeping through the country. We'll tell you where. vitamin D. Could it actually be a secret weapon in the fight against COVID? Black Friday is more than just one day this year. We'll tell you some hacks to save big. But first, a look at our top trending stories on abcnews.com.
Right now, this is part of the eye wall. This procession of migrants goes back 2 miles.
There is going to be catastrophic damage.
This fire has made a run. You can see those flames shooting up into the sky.
We are on the jam-packed red carpet.
To the right, guys.
So this is the 4th weekend of protest.
Watch ABC News on location for Facebook Watch.
What's the most innovative daily news podcast out there to listen to every day? Well, the Edward R. Murrow Awards say it's Start Here, the daily news podcast from ABC News. Even the New York Times calls us a top news podcast worth listening to. So if you like getting behind the biggest news stories of the day, inside all the details, the backstory, and what will happen next, then listen to Start Here, the daily news podcast from ABC News. It's like no other news podcast out there. Even the critics agree. Listen free on Apple Podcasts.
This is what being live is all about. This is ABC News Live, the 24/7 streaming news source from ABC News. Breaking news, live events, streaming nonstop. Original breakthrough storytelling from ABC News, National Geographic, ESPN, and it's all designed differently for you to stream straight to any screen whenever you want.
ABC News Live.
Streaming everywhere, right to you.
ABC News Live. It's that easy to go there.
The Americans here on the ground and the Iraqis. 18,000 tons. Patatas. Ismail? David.
Over ground zero from Hurricane Michael.
You can see just home after home.
David, nice to meet you.
This was your view.
My favorite view.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Tonight,
A man who swears he's innocent is on death row, and the clock is ticking.
The evidence was the word of a fraud.
But this is a guy who is a professional con man, and you knew it.
Absolutely.
He claimed to be working for the CIA. His alias was Jason Bourne.
He's a perfect liar.
the new 2020 event.
Did you murder Shelley Bojan?
No. I'm sorry.
Could an innocent man be on death row on the word of the perfect liar? Tonight on ABC.
The race for the White House now in its final stretch. President Trump and former Vice President Biden clashed on major election issues like the pandemic in what was a relatively normal debate.
We have no choice. We can't lock ourselves up in a basement like Joe does.
He says that we're learning to live with it. People are learning to die with it.
Americans are breaking records in early voting during the pandemic, casting 52 million ballots, either by mail or in person, surpassing the total 47 million early votes cast in 2016.
Now underway in all 50 states and in Washington, D.C.
Welcome back. Back now with disturbing details about a foiled plot to assassinate former Vice President Joe Biden involving a teenager and a van full of guns. Our Pierre Thomas is in Washington, D.C. with the details.
Tonight, a Seattle man is in custody as authorities investigate a potential plot to kill presidential candidate Joe Biden. Newly available court documents offering chilling details about 19-year-old Alexander Treisman. Authorities say Treisman bought an AR-15 style rifle and traveled within 4 miles of the vice president's home this spring. And investigators also discovered a written checklist that ended with the word execute. In April, allegedly posting a meme with the caption, "Should I kill Joe Biden?" Treisman first drew the attention of authorities in May when employees at a North Carolina bank reported his van abandoned in a parking lot. They discovered the AR-15 style rifle, a canister of explosive material, and boxes of ammunition. The FBI then opening an investigation, uncovering that Treisman allegedly had interest in terror attacks and mass shootings and had traveled around the country purchasing weapons in various states. Last month, he was charged with possession of child pornography. A judge has denied bail, and the suspect is being held pending trial. Lindsay?
Pierre, our thanks to you. Winter continues its creep into our lives. There are winter storm alerts right now across 8 states from Washington to Nebraska. Up to a foot of snow is expected in the Rockies as that storm makes its way into the Midwest. And take a look at these cold temperatures. Wind chills in some areas plunging into the teens and single digits. Well, Black Friday this year is being spread out over several weeks, and there are new tips to help you get the best deals. This as Target is announcing a plan to help keep shoppers safe. Rebecca Jarvis has the details.
There's no mistaking it. Long lines, overnight doorbusters, and battles over bargains have been an annual tradition during the holiday shopping season. But this year, Black Friday is going to be anything but traditional.
Retailers want to make sure that shoppers feel safe and feel comfortable, and so we're seeing them take those steps to do that.
Many of those end-of-year deals won't be in the stores, but on their websites. Walmart with online deals spread out over 3 events starting November 4th. Lowe's online Season of Savings starting yesterday. A Deloitte survey expecting 64% of holiday budgets to be spent online. But if you do plan on going to the stores, retailers are making big changes to protect shoppers. Target announcing a new system to move waiting in line online.
You can actually reserve your spot in line. You can check ahead of time, and if there is a line, you'll be notified so you don't show up and then see that it's more crowded than you expect.
The retailer even offering more than 8,000 new curbside parking spots nationwide. The contactless experience is a big selling point that many retailers are offering now. Nordstrom extending curbside hours, even offering complimentary gift wrapping with all purchases.
Our thanks to Rebecca for that. The Black Lives Matter protests over the summer were initially aimed at exposing inequalities in our system. Well, one of the issues that marchers often brought up was the lack of black business ownership and how those ripple effects have helped cause disproportionate poverty. Calls were made to support black businesses, and as Alex Perche reports, it appears to be making a difference.
Washington, D.C.'s Union Market neighborhood is bustling. Many in the lunch crowd here are looking for that afternoon pick-me-up to help finish the day, and the Village Cafe is a place a lot of them come. It's run by a trio of young founders, Ryan Williams, Kevon King, and Mohammed Mangum, all buddies from high school. They're about to celebrate the cafe's 2nd anniversary. It's a combination of culinary and creative strengths. As the name suggests, the Village is about community.
We all had our own different passions, but we decided to come together to kind of not only start a business together, but create spaces for us and for others.
COVID threatened to spoil that. Like many D.C. businesses, they had to close earlier this year, only reopening in August. The Village has always had a stable following, but when they reopened, they noticed a new community awareness, specifically in black-owned businesses like theirs.
It's a really amazing thing, actually, to be able to see that, you know, people are taking initiatives to want to support businesses, and a lot of times these are like brand new people who have never been, especially with us, or have heard of us, and then they learn about us.
Black Lives Matter.
Following a summer full of national headlines around George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Black Lives Matter, and the coronavirus, a new movement emerged called Buy Black, highlighting black-owned businesses and giving them much-needed support. According to the latest statistics from the U.S. Census Bureau's annual business survey, minorities own an estimated 1 million businesses in the U.S. Of those, just 12% were black-owned. And according to Yelp, mentions of black-owned in reviews are up 617% this summer compared to last.
Consumers are eager to seek out, find, and support black-owned businesses.
Tara Lewis is a Yelp trends expert.
In fact, just this past summer, on Yelp, we noticed a 6,520% increase in searches for black-owned businesses.
Looking at those numbers, what does that tell you?
It tells you that people are really interested in putting their dollars where their values are and what they care about the most. If they have a choice to spend at multiple different places, and right now that they really want to support the Black community, supporting Black-owned businesses with your dollars is a great way to do that.
Websites like Yelp, DoorDash, and Facebook even highlighting Black-owned shops. In nearby Virginia, Tracy and Ernisha Hall see the impact of this firsthand regularly. They run the Virginia Black Business Directory.
It's been an amazing wave. And I will say that some of these business owners, they were on the brink of closure.
And many of them have not seen numbers that they have seen in the past due to Buy Black, the wave of Buy Black.
Earlier this month, they hosted a Black Business Expo at the Fredericksburg Fairgrounds. More than 100 participants, socially distanced and wearing masks.
Why was it important for these businesses to be able to come out and have that face-to-face with folks in the community?
It was important because a lot of these businesses did not get the economic assistance that they needed when COVID hit.
Many struggled to get relief from the Paycheck Protection Program. That dried up in August. Congress has stalled on talks of additional stimulus, but the damage has already been done. The New York Fed estimates Black-owned businesses in the U.S. declined 41% between February and April. Ernisha and Tracy were fortunate their graphic design website branding company wasn't part of that statistic.
We lost 90% of our revenue during COVID. We did not receive economic assistance to keep us afloat. However, we've been blessed to stay afloat. So Buy Black was a way to ensure that Black-owned businesses and Black communities and Black families still receive the same amount of revenue, treatment, and be able to have the same level of success.
The duo put together a restaurant week last month and plan to keep these kinds of events going.
I love the momentum. I'm glad it's lasting this long.
And while this movement is providing much needed exposure for some businesses struggling through the challenges of the coronavirus, it's also made fertile ground for others to begin.
Baking is kind of like a labor of love for me.
Kiara Ben owns Willie Ruth's Cookies, a passion project turned side hustle. It's named after her grandmother. She grew up spending summers with in rural Louisiana. That's where she gets a lot of her recipes from, including these red velvet cookies. Kiara has been in business since the end of July.
You started a business smack dab in the middle of a pandemic.
Right.
And they will scratch their head
and say, what was she thinking? But again, I say, why not now?
Kiara recently went to her first Black Business Expo.
People walking through the door actually calling me the cookie lady.
She says she's seen a sizable bump in orders because of the Buy Black movement. Right now, she's still baking out of her own kitchen, but she says this kind of growth will allow her business to expand. She's already cooking up new ideas for the holidays.
I'm definitely excited, and I'm excited to introduce some new seasonal flavors, but we're going to have a pumpkin spice latte cookie, an apple pie cookie, a peppermint chocolate cookie for the holidays.
And for the businesses we talk to, the general sense is this momentum will continue. The Buy Black movement may have started brewing this year, but they don't see it going anywhere.
We believe that this interest in supporting Black-owned businesses is much more than a trend, and it's a movement, and it's one that's going to continue for a long time.
Alex Perche, ABC News, Washington.
We turn now to some intriguing research about a possible link between COVID-19 outcomes and vitamin D, something that most Americans, and especially people of color, are severely lacking. Known as the sunshine vitamin, it's produced by the body in response to sun exposure and found in some foods like fish, eggs, and fortified dairy and grains. Tonight, we bring in Dr. L. Ray Matthews, who studies vitamin D. He's a recently retired trauma surgeon and researcher at Morehouse School of Medicine and Grady Hospital, Atlanta. Thanks so much for joining us, Doctor.
Thank you for having me.
So as a trauma surgeon in an inner city hospital, you saw some of the worst injuries imaginable. What happened when you decided to administer large doses of vitamin D at prescription levels?
Well, after we started giving vitamin D, which is really a hormone, so it's a hormone, is not a true vitamin. So hormones work different from vitamins. Vitamins are just spark plugs and make reactions go at a faster rate. Vitamin or hormone D controls 3,000 out of the 30,000 genes in the human body. Among those are your immune response system and your inflammatory response system. Those two are very important for a surgeon because my job is to reduce infection and reduce inflammatory responses.
Now, everyone needs vitamin D, but you say that half the world's population actually has a deficiency. Would we all be healthier and able to heal faster if we took vitamin D supplements?
Yes, we would. Actually, we decrease the hospitalization of our patients, their length of stay about 3 or 4 days on the floors and the ICUs. So our patients heal faster. They had fewer infections, fewer heart attacks, fewer strokes. They got well and came back to clinic, and most of them didn't want any narcotics. And most of them went back to work, and they were actually productive paying members of society instead of relying on public assistance.
Are you concerned at all about the pandemic causing more people to stay inside and thus reducing their exposure to sunlight and limiting their amount of vitamin D?
Well, you can supplement, Lindsay. I take a supplement. I'm indoors a lot. And as a surgeon, I used to work 80 to 100 hours a week. And so you can imagine I didn't get outside often. So you can take supplements, which would help.
And you say that obesity also plays a role in vitamin D levels.
Yes, it does. The vitamin D gets stored in the fat cells instead of being in the blood cells. So there are about 30 different conditions that can lower your vitamin D level.
And tell us why getting enough vitamin D is of particular concern for African Americans and anyone with darker or browner skin.
Well, dark-skinned people usually have lower vitamin D levels because we have melanin in our skin. And melanin is a natural sunscreen which blocks 98% of vitamin D production. So a dark-skinned person would have to stand outside 3 to 10 times longer in the sun in order to make the same amount of vitamin D. As a result, dark-skinned people tend to have a vitamin D levels 30% lower than the average lighter-skinned person.
And let's get to COVID-19 in particular. What does the research tell us about the potential links between vitamin D and COVID outcomes, and what might it mean for Black and brown communities?
The research now that's coming out is showing what I've been saying all along and doing all along. Actually, as a trauma surgeon, patients are on the ventilators. They get ventilator-associated pneumonia. When I started at Grady approximately 13, 14 years ago, they had an 80% incidence of pneumonia. So when I started my high-dose protocol vitamin D regimen, we reduced our incidence of ventilator-associated pneumonia down to 20%. The national average is 10%. And we killed or reduced all type of pneumonias, viral, bacterial, fungal. It basically works against any pneumonia. If you understand the biochemistry and the pathophysiology of how pathogens hurt the body, you can understand the mechanism, you can kill anything, basically.
So COVID-19, though, in particular, what's your thought as it pertains to vitamin D?
The way COVID works is that what vitamin D does is, like I said, it's a hormone, so it increases your white blood cell count. White blood cells are the things that fight off the bacteria, the viruses, and fungus. For the medical personnel, if you supplement your patients with vitamin D, about 4 or 5 days later, you'll see an increase in their CD4 count, which is a T cell, or another name for white blood cell. So you can directly measure that in terms of biomarkers. And also in COVID, or coronavirus, when they have a lot of inflammation in their body. You see the C-reactive protein and interleukin-6. Those are medical terms. These are just biomarkers in the blood, and you see those decrease. So you see the CD4 white count go up, and you see the inflammation decrease. So those are two things that COVID does, basically, is harm the body with all the inflammatory reactions that it causes.
So just some of the early studies that have come out with regard to vitamin D and finding people who are have deficiencies, I guess, in vitamin D, they don't seem to be faring as well with COVID-19. Is that right?
Yes, to lower your vitamin D level, the worse you do. There was a study came out in the Annals of Medicine years ago that showed when your vitamin D level gets less than 18 nanograms per milliliter, that's the amount of vitamin D measured in your blood, your risk of death goes up 30% for all causes, whether it's coronavirus, regular pneumonia, flu, traumatic brain injuries, or gunshot wound victims. So having low vitamin D levels increase your hospital. I wrote a paper saying low vitamin D levels increase the mortality rate, hospital length of stay, and hospital cost.
Dr. Matthews, really fascinating stuff. We thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
And when we come back, the movie everyone's talking about, Borat, starring Sacha Baron Cohen. And in one scene, Rudy Giuliani. Giuliani denies anything inappropriate. Hear what Baron Cohen told our Amy Robach when we come back.
I know what happened, and I'm not guilty.
Why the fascination with criminal trials? Figure out what's really out there.
She revealed she had murdered his family.
I know in my heart they did this.
It's the time of suspicion.
The ending's really tough.
You don't know whether truth is going to be difficult to find unless you try to find it.
Welcome to Disney Plus. Are you ready? Drop in and explore. The action, the adventure, and the originals. There's no limit to what you'll find. These are your worlds. So come on, dive deeper into the universes you love. Wherever and whenever you want them, you'll find them all here on Disney Plus.
32 million Hispanics eligible to vote in this election. The potential power of the Latino vote in America is...
They would have a tidal wave impact.
And now, with the most consequential election of a lifetime closing in fast, what will be their impact?
Latinos, exercise your right.
Hay que votar. Vote! From ABC News, powerful, astonishing, revealing, historic.
America's future.
The power
of the Latino vote.
The all-new event special breaks Tuesday night on ABC News Live.
Hello?
This is Montana Highway Patrol. You're looking for a couple of missing teenagers.
That's right. Last seen in a red Focus.
The steering wheel is getting stiff. Lock the door. We're fine.
Got ourselves a predicament.
When the night has come. This is what being live is all about. This is ABC News Live, the 24/7 streaming news source from ABC News. Breaking news, live events, streaming nonstop. Original breakthrough storytelling from ABC News, National Geographic, ESPN, and it's all designed differently for you to stream straight to any screen whenever you want.
ABC News Live.
Streaming everywhere, right to you. ABC News Live. It's that easy to go there.
It's being called the most consequential election of a lifetime, the most important vote, and with so much on the line, it demands the most straightforward, newsmaking, real answers, the most informed voices from all sides. The countdown is on to the vote. What will our future look like? ABC's This Week with George. It all plays out right here every Sunday.
The most consequential week yet of this hyper-political year.
Right as you get closer to casting your vote every Sunday on ABC.
The race for the White House now in its final stretch. President Trump and former Vice President Biden clashed on major election issues like the pandemic in what was a relatively normal debate.
We have no choice. We can't lock ourselves up in a basement like Joe does.
He says that we're learning to live with it. People are learning to die with it.
Americans are breaking records in early voting during the pandemic, casting 52 million ballots, either by mail or in person, surpassing the total 47 million early votes cast in 2016. Now underway in all 50 states and in Washington, D.C. Election Day, just 11 days away.
Vice President Mike Pence joining the millions of Americans who have voted early, casting his ballot in Indiana today. President Trump set to vote early tomorrow in Florida.
Delta banning hundreds of passengers for not wearing masks.
I have idea of a hair.
Okay.
This one, nice one.
This is actually a gentleman.
This is a man?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so we're gonna do a spray tan today. How dark is she wanting to go?
What color is best for a racist family?
I would stay right here. I wouldn't go any darker than a 6 or a 7.
That lady does not crack a smile. That is Sacha Baron Cohen in the just-released Borat movie, a follow-up to the 2006 hit. This time, the title character is joined by his daughter, played by Bulgarian actress Maria Bakalova. It's filled with plenty of outrageous scenes like that have a lot of people talking, including President Trump's attorney, Rudy Giuliani, about a scene in which Giuliani himself is seen in a compromising position in a hotel room with Bakalova's character. Giuliani tweeted, the Borat video is a complete fabrication. I was tucking in my shirt after taking off the recording equipment. At no time was I ever inappropriate. If Sacha Baron Cohen implies otherwise, he is a stone-cold liar. Here's how Baron Cohen responded to Giuliani's tweet this morning on GMA.
If the president's lawyer found what he did there appropriate behavior, then heaven knows what he's done with other female journalists in hotel rooms. I just urge everyone to watch the movie. It is what it is. He did what he did, and make your own mind up. It was pretty clear to us.
Maybe I want to thank you that I was sure that you were going to save me from everything.
Well, I was actually, I was quite concerned for her during the scene. We'd built a hideaway that I was hiding in during the entire scene. So I was monitoring it by text, but it's my responsibility as a producer as well to ensure that the lead actor is looked after.
It is what it is. He did what he did. You'll have to see for yourself. Borat's subsequent movie film is now available on Amazon Prime. And before we go tonight, our image of the day. A child peering out from the sunroof of a car as the older people inside wait in line for curbside voting. This all took place in Durham, North Carolina on the state's first day of in-person early voting. Millions more are expected to exercise the right to vote this weekend. And that is our show for this hour. Stay tuned to ABC News Live for more context and analysis of the day's top stories. I'm Lindsay Davis. Thanks so much for streaming with us, and have a great weekend.
Welcome to Disney Plus. Are you ready? Drop in and explore.